My mom said we were too broke to bring me. Then I watched them walk into first class. My name is Kayla. I'm 30. And a few weeks ago, my own family looked me in the eye and basically told me I wasn't worth the cost of a plane ticket. It started on a random Tuesday night video call. My mom sighed, did that exhausted hand to her forehead thing, and said, "We're absolutely strapped right now. We just can't afford to take you on our trip this year." Before I could even respond, my older brother chuckled in the background, that half laugh he uses when he wants to slide an insult past you as a joke. "For real," he said, "tickets for 5 are already insane. 6 would tip us over. You're just extra this time." For a few seconds, I just stared at the screen. I've spent years wiring them money for emergencies, picking up random bills, spotting cash, just until payday. And now, in one short call, I was the line item they'd decided to cut. So I did what I was trained to do. I forced a laugh, swallowed the sting, and said something polite like, "No worries, I get it. You guys have a lot going on." Then I got off the call and sat in my tiny Denver apartment telling myself they must be really struggling this time. That skipping one family vacation was not a big deal. That being understanding was what a good daughter and sister does. I told myself that right up until the day I rolled my own suitcase into the airport and saw who was standing at the first-class counter. 2 weeks after that, those first-class smiles were gone. My mother wasn't calling me her rock anymore, and my brother had stopped joking about his rich baby sister. If you want to know how one broke family trip ended with me finally cutting off my family's favorite funding source, listen to what happened next. Because the truth is, that airport moment only hurt as much as it did because of the years that came before it. I live in Denver. I have what most people would call a solid but unglamorous job as an operations coordinator for a logistics company. I'm not rolling in it. I rent, I budget, I'm still chipping away at my student loans. But my bills are paid on time, and I keep a spreadsheet for a reason. My parents, on the other hand, have lived permanently on the edge of "we're drowning" for as long as I can remember. My dad had a minor stroke in his late 50s and left his job at the auto plant earlier than planned. My mom, Janice, works reception 3 days a week at a chiropractor's office now. My older brother, Ben, lives out in the suburbs of Aurora with a wife, 2 kids, and a mortgage in a cul-de-sac full of perfectly similar houses. In my mom's story, Ben is the responsible one. He has a family to provide for. He has real obligations. It's ironic, because if you ever saw his credit card balances, you'd know responsible is not the word the bank would use. But my mom never looks that closely. In our family, there's a rule no one ever wrote down, but everyone follows. If something goes sideways, Kayla will figure it out. When the water company threatened to shut off service, my mom called me with a quiver in her voice. "Baby, I hate to ask, but they're saying they'll turn it off Friday if we don't pay the past due. Can you help? Just this once?" When my nephew, Owen, signed up for travel baseball, or my niece, Harper, needed supplies for a school project that somehow turned into a full costume, Ben would text, "We're super tight this month. If you could throw in a little, it would mean the world. I'll get you back next check, promise." Next check never seemed to arrive. I sent money through Zelle, Venmo, direct deposits, often enough that my banking app started showing their names in the frequent recipients list, like they were my utilities. I cut back on dinners out, told myself I didn't need a better couch, downgraded my streaming services, all so I could help. Every time I started to build a little momentum for myself, a mini emergency fund, a plane ticket fund, someone's crisis blew straight through it. And the whole time, the way they talked about my life made it sound like I was living on easy mode. "You're lucky," my mom would say. "No kids, no husband, you can always make more money." "That's the benefit of being single," my brother liked to joke. "You're free, no daycare, no pediatrician bills, nothing tying you down." Free apparently meant endlessly available to finance everyone else's real lives. Slowly, without really deciding to, I stopped even fantasizing about big trips for myself. Photos of Icelandic waterfalls or Italian cities would come up in my feed, and I'd scroll past them thinking, maybe someday, after Dad's stable, after the mortgage is caught up, after the kids are older. There was always a reason my needs landed last. Then, early this year, my company announced a hiring freeze and said there would be no bonuses, no raises, and just stability if we were lucky. It scared me, but it also woke something up. I was 30. I had never taken a proper vacation that wasn't tacked on to visiting my family and paying for half their stuff while I was there. For the first time, I thought, what if I did something that was for all of us, instead of just patching things? If we did a modest family trip together, somewhere drivable, like San Diego, or cheap flight territory like Phoenix, maybe I'd finally get to feel like part of the group, not just the emergency fund. So on that call, before the "we're broke" line, I actually started with, I've been thinking, what if we did a family beach trip this year? Nothing crazy, 3 or 4 days. I can help cover some of it. It'd be nice to all be together for something good for once. I expected at least a pause. Maybe. Let's see. Maybe some talk about dates. Instead, my mom's response landed like she'd rehearsed it. Kayla, honey, we are broke. We just can't afford to bring you along this year. Then Ben chimed in, chuckling. Yeah, flights for all of us are already killer. Adding you tips it over. You being home saves us a lot. It was like listening to someone justify cutting the least used cable channel. Something in me cracked. Just a hairline fracture. I shoved it down. I told myself they must truly be sinking, that I was overreacting, that a cheap, scrappy solo trip would be fine. What I didn't know yet was that their version of broke and mine were not even in the same dictionary. A couple weeks later, I was standing in my little galley kitchen tossing clothes into a faded carry-on, trying to make myself excited about my plan B, a quick solo trip to Seattle. I'd found a rock-bottom fare from Denver to SeaTac, used credit card miles for the return, and arranged to sleep on a friend's futon. I had a list of free museums and parks, and my budget was written out down to the dollar. No checked bag, no upgrades. I checked in online. There was my boarding group. Last, my seat, back of the plane, middle. I told myself it didn't matter that I'd never sat in anything other than economy, that I didn't care that some people got champagne before takeoff, that this was enough. I caught a lift to the airport, rolled my suitcase into the terminal, and joined the long, shuffling economy check-in line. It was the usual chaos, toddlers crying, suit jackets over arms, the smell of coffee and stress. I had my headphones around my neck, my mind on Pike Place Market, and maybe a cheap rush ticket to a show. Then I heard it, my brother's laugh. I know that sound. It's louder when he has an audience and wants everyone to know he's enjoying himself. I told myself it couldn't possibly be him. Then I heard my mom say, Ben, grab Harper's bag, in that clipped, bossy tone she uses when she's in logistics mode. I turned, and there they were, not fumbling with overstuffed suitcases at the self-serve kiosks, not arguing with an agent about baggage fees. They were at the sleek, cordoned-off desk under the sign that said, First/Business. My mom had a new travel tote slung over her shoulder, the kind with a brand label I recognized from exactly how much it cost. She leaned one elbow on a hard-side suitcase that definitely hadn't come from a discount store. She looked relaxed. My brother stood next to her in a golf shirt, talking to the ticket agent like they were old friends. His wife, Kelsey, was holding up her phone, doing a playful pout-faced selfie with their 2 kids, Owen and Harper, tucked in around her. The kids, meanwhile, were practically vibrating, waving little paper wallets in the air. Mom, look, Harper squealed. It says priority on here. That's because we're fancy today, Kelsey cooed. Big seats for big travelers. The kids have never done this before, my mom told the agent, all proud. We decided it was time to do it right. The agent smiled and handed over a neat stack of glossy boarding passes. Enjoy your trip to Honolulu, she said. Honolulu. Not a cheap beach weekend, not a drivable budget trip. My mom, the same woman who'd exhaled into her phone that they were too broke to bring me anywhere, was heading to Hawaii in first class. My throat went tight. For one brief, irrational second, I wondered if some miracle had hit between that phone call and now. A lottery win. A forgotten inheritance. Something that would make sense of the difference between "we can't afford you" and priority boarding group. Then I saw my mom's phone screen as she slid it into her tote, just long enough to read the notification at the top. Your payment to United Airlines has posted. I saw the expensive airport coffees in their hands. I saw my brother tilt his head and say to the kids, After the year we've had, we deserve this. Right, Grandma? My mom laughed. Org, we really do. I turned away before any of them could glance in my direction. I could have marched over, could have said very loudly, Funny you could swing first class to Hawaii, but not an extra seat in economy for your daughter. Could have embarrassed them, demanded an answer. Instead, I did what I always do. I swallowed it. I let the economy line lurch forward. I let them glide into the empty priority line. I let the curtain between coach and first class be a literal reminder of what I already knew. We were not on the same side of anything. On the plane, wedged between a guy who hogged both armrests and a college kid editing photos, I replayed the scene. My brain tried nice interpretations. Maybe it's all points. Maybe someone gifted them the trip. Maybe they thought I'd say no. Maybe they're ashamed. But the math didn't change. They had told me they were too broke to take me on any trip. They had not been too broke to book first class to Hawaii for 4. When the plane touched down in Seattle, my friends were there with hugs and "you're finally here" enthusiasm. We ate cheap dumplings and walked the waterfront and did indeed sit in a rush ticket balcony seat at a show. But some part of me stayed in that Denver terminal, watching my own mother treat me like the most disposable part of her finances. I didn't call them from Seattle. I didn't send a passive-aggressive text or an airport selfie. I waited until I got home, and when my mom called with the first "we need help" after Hawaii, I was ready. I hadn't even unpacked my carry-on when my phone flashed. "Mom." Usually I'd let it go a ring or two, inhale. I would answer with a smile they couldn't see. This time I watched it buzz. Then I picked up. "Hey," I said. She sounded weirdly bright for about 30 seconds, asked how my trip was, whether the rain was as bad as people say, if my flight had been on time. We did the small talk dance. Then her voice slipped into the quiver I knew by heart. "Sweetie," she said, "I hate to even ask this, but your dad's latest prescriptions wiped us out, and the power bill is late, the gas is behind, we're really in a bind. Could you help us out just this one time?" The words "just this one time" felt like a script I'd heard so often I could recite it along with her. I stared at the spot on my wall where the paint was chipped and said, as evenly as I could, "Were you in a bind when you bought first-class tickets to Hawaii?" Silence. "Oh, what?" she said too quickly. "I saw you at the airport," I told her. "At the first-class counter. You, Ben, Kelsey, the kids. 2 weeks after you told me you were too broke to take me anywhere." "Oh," she said weakly. Then after a beat, "It's not what it looked like," she scrambled. "It was mostly miles. Your brother had some credit with the airline. We found this package deal. It wasn't like we just had a bunch of money lying around. And after everything with your dad's health, the kids needed a break. We thought you'd understand." "You thought I'd understand being left out," I said. "You thought I'd be fine staying home to save you money while you got the big seats and tropical drinks. And then when the bills you've been ignoring caught up, I'd be right here to fix it." Her tone sharpened. "You don't have children," she said. "You don't know what it's like to try and juggle all this. Your brother works so hard. We can't give Owen and Harper nothing. You're independent. You were taking a trip anyway. You're fine." For years, that argument had worked on me. The implication that my life was somehow fundamentally easier, and therefore I owed them my margin. This time, I opened my banking app with my free hand and scrolled through the sea of green outflows with my family's names attached. Utility payments, emergency transfers, rent supplements, school fees. "I know exactly what it's like to juggle bills," I said. "I've been juggling mine and yours for years." "That's not fair," she shot back. "We've always appreciated." "You said you were broke," I cut in. "Then you went on a first-class vacation and told yourselves you deserved it. You didn't invite me. You didn't even tell me. You only remembered me when it was time to pay for the boring parts again." Her breath hitched. "So what? You're punishing us now," she said. "Holding one trip over our heads, we needed that." "I'm not punishing anyone," I said. "I'm just opting out. I'm done sending money, no more bills, no more last-minute emergencies. No more just this once, not from me." She was quiet for a second, and then the tears came. "How can you do this?" she cried. "To your own parents? Your father is sick. We could lose the house. Your brother is barely staying afloat. You're really going to sit there and watch us struggle when you have the means to help?" For a long time, being the one who could help had been my identity. Of the compliment I clung to, the reason I excused every overstep. Now it sounded like a sentence. "I have helped," I said. "And you made it very clear where I rank in your priorities. I love you. I'm not your bank." She called me selfish, said she was ashamed, said I'd understand when I had my own family. We ended the call with her still crying and me still saying no. When I hung up, my hands were trembling, but underneath the adrenaline, there was something startlingly like relief. For the first time in my adult life, I'd said no and not immediately followed it with, "Okay, fine, I'll send something." It didn't take long for Ben to come barreling in after that. He didn't bother with an opening line. When I finally answered his fourth call, he jumped right in. "What the hell are you doing?" he demanded. "Mom says you've cut them off. Are you serious?" I put him on speaker, set the phone on the table, and took a breath. "Yes," I said, "I'm serious." "You can't," he snapped. "Dad's meds, the mortgage, the kids. You know they'll lose everything without help. And you're over there acting like some starving artist when you've got money." "I pay my rent, my loans, my own health insurance," I said. "The money you're thinking of is the money I've been sending you and them." He laughed, short and bitter. "You don't have kids, Kay," he said. "You have no idea what real sacrifice looks like. Try paying for braces and birthday parties and summer camps. You just exist. Go to your office, go to your spin class, hop on a plane when you feel like it. You're 30, and your biggest problem is what concert to go to." It was such a warped view of my life that I almost didn't know where to start. "You're right," I said instead. "I don't have kids. That's exactly why I'm not responsible for yours." He blinked. I could hear it in the way his breathing hitched. "Wow," he said slowly. "You really have turned into a bitch." "Ben," I said, "I watched you take your kids to Hawaii in first class while Mom told me you were broke. She used my no kids status as the reason I should understand being left behind. Then you both turned around and called me when the bills came due. That's not sacrifice. That's using me." "It wasn't like that," he protested. "Kels found a crazy deal. It was mostly points. We hardly paid anything." "If it was practically free," I said. "Why wasn't there room for me?" He scrambled. "Blamed timing. Said my work schedule was too hard. Said they thought I'd want to do my own thing and a family trip would cramp my style." "You always make things complicated," he said. "We just wanted one stress-free trip, and now you're blowing everything up over it." "I didn't blow anything up," I said. "You did that over the last decade. Living like bills were suggestions." I just stopped quietly patting the landing. "So you're just going to let them sink?" he asked, voice rising. "Sit in your little downtown apartment and watch our parents lose their house. After everything they've done for you." I thought about the everything. The emotional support, yes, but also the guilt, the assumptions, the power cut notices that had kept me up at night. "No," I said. "I'm going to let you finally live inside the reality you built. I'm not bailing you out of it." He swore, called me heartless, told me I'd regret it when Dad's gone, and I'd thrown away my chance to do the right thing. I let him finish. Then for the first time in our lives, I hung up on him. I set my phone to Do Not Disturb for every text chain with their names in it. The quiet that followed wasn't comfortable. Not at first. It felt like walking out of a room where someone was mid-rant and closing the door. But underneath the discomfort was something I hadn't felt in years. Control over where my money went and who I answered to. I thought the worst of it was over. I was wrong. About 2 weeks later, my mom's text about the final notice came through. The word foreclosure wasn't in her message, but it was there in the letter she sent me a photo of. 3 months delinquent, no more extensions, options, pay in full, work out a modification, or start the process of surrender. I listened as she talked about losing the only home we've ever known. What struck me wasn't that they were in trouble. I'd known on some level for a long time that they were stretched too thin. What struck me was that they'd been this far behind even before the Hawaii trip, and still decided, consciously, that a week in the sun mattered more than catching up. They had gambled that future Kayla would smooth it over. For once, she didn't. In the end, the bank did what banks do. My parents put the house on the market. They cried in the kitchen my dad had retiled himself. They boxed up 3 decades of holidays and report cards. Yeah, they posed for one last photo on the front steps. Then they moved into a smaller rental across town where the rent is lower and the countertops aren't granite. Ben and Kelsey lasted a few more months in their dream house. Then the ripple effects caught them too. Lost clients, a slow season, a couple of late payments, the reality that 2 car notes, private lessons, and eating out 3 times a week don't magically fit into a fixed income. They sold the SUV, they listed the house, they moved their kids into a smaller townhouse with shared walls and a smaller yard. Soccer and dance and travel baseball disappeared from the calendar. Kelsey's Instagram changed tone. No more airport, we deserve this, selfies. And instead, ramen and takeout containers and inspirational memes about finding out who really cares when things get tough. Aunts and cousins tried to drag me in. "Your mom is so stressed," one said. Can't you just help a little? I did help, I answered. For years, this is what it looks like without me doing that. Some relatives got it, some didn't. They thought I was being petty or punishing or letting money come between us. All I knew was that for the first time in my adult life, my financial state didn't depend on whether my brother called in tears or my mother left a shaky voicemail. Without the constant leaks, my account started to look normal. Balances went down on my cards. My savings slowly crept up. I put a little each month into a fund labeled Future Kayla and booked a modest but fully paid week in Portugal for next year. At work, without the mental drain of doing unpaid crisis management for my family, I had more energy. My boss noticed. I got a promotion and a raise. One evening, sitting on my couch with my promotion email on one screen and a confirmation from a travel site on the other, something clicked. I had spent so long believing my worth to my family was tied to how quickly I responded to, "We're broke," that I didn't know who I was without that job. Once I stepped out of the role, they acted like I'd vanished. But I hadn't. I was still here, paying my own bills, building my own life, laughing with friends, choosing flights for myself. They just weren't seeing me anymore because I'd stopped playing the character they liked. Do I feel sad that my parents lost their house? Of course. Do I wish they'd been honest with me about the Hawaii trip instead of lying and letting me find out in an airport line? Yes. Would I have helped them if they'd included me in good times as well as bad? If they'd invited me along as their daughter, not as their funding source? Probably. That's the line for me now. Family is not people who only remember you exist when something needs paying. Family is people who see you as a person with limits, who tell you the truth, who don't deliberately exclude you from joy and then demand you absorb their pain. Oh, if you're reading this and you feel like the human ATM in your family, the one they joke about having no real responsibilities while quietly leaning on your income, hear this. Saying no does not make you a bad daughter, son, sibling, or grandchild. It makes you someone who understands that your future is worth protecting. The people who genuinely love you will be hurt. They might not understand at first. They might throw every guilt line they have at you. But they will either adjust or they will show you that what they loved was access to what you could give them, not you. My mom once told me, "We're broke. We can't afford to bring you." What she really meant was, we can't afford to be honest about how we're using you. I stopped paying that price. And because of that, for the first time in a long time, my life feels like it actually belongs to me.